This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Catrine Malan, standing in for Eben, Jansen, who will be back tomorrow. Newsroom is streaming live on YouTube as we speak and will do so for the next hour. The entire show can also be watched on demand on our YouTube channel throughout the day. Today we celebrate Workers' Day and we'll speak to some of the biggest unions in South Africa. Elections are less than a week away and we have the Independent Electoral Commission in studio with us as well. And we speak to a basketball champ from Catrine, but more on that later in the show. Let's first have a look at this morning's headlines. Secretary-General Eben says metal workers of South Africa will commemorate May Day by reflecting on the challenges they have been facing in the 20 years of democracy. Today, workers across the world will be commemorating May Day. This year's May Day commemoration coincides with 20 years of a free and democratic country. With next week's general election drawing closer, political parties are seeking to maximize the remaining time they have left to leave a lasting impression with voters. Leaders of different political parties are expected to hold Workers' Day rallies around the country. Meanwhile, thousands of South Africans living abroad have been voting, with many spending hours queuing to reach ballot boxes. This is the first election which has allowed South Africans to register outside the country, meaning a higher turnout than previous years. And then Kaizer Chiefs' hopes of retaining the Premier League title appear to be in tatters after they were held to a 1-1 draw by relegation-threatened Free State Stars at the Peter Mokaba Stadium on Wednesday night. Amakosi now find themselves trailing log leaders Mamelodi Sundowns by 4 points with 2 fixtures remaining. Chiefs champions hopes. With the elections less than a week away, political parties will be out in force on Workers' Day. The ANC will be holding a number of rallies across the country, with President Jacob Zuma expected to address crowds in Polokwane. DA leader Helen Zille will be speaking at a gathering in Kimberley, while EFF leader Julius Malema is expected to speak in Emalahleni. Meanwhile, the first ballots in South Africa's 5th national elections have been cast around the world.
It could have been South Africa with the weather, but it was in London where the sun shone down on thousands of expats lining up to cast their votes. Many travelled from across Britain to be able to take part. Voters were in good spirits, despite queuing for around 2 hours to reach the front. The thousands turning up here say this is more than just an election. Many plan to return to South Africa in the years to come and hope their vote will create a better country. The votes being cast here will be sealed and sent to South Africa in the next 24 hours. They'll then be counted on the 7th of May, alongside the votes cast in the country. Dan Whitehead, SABC News, London.
Election fever has already caught up with the most South Africans. As South Africans living abroad were able to cast their votes for the first time. The next round of voting will be special votes for people who will not be able to cast their votes on the 7th of May. In less than a week, the rest of South Africa will be heading to the polls for the 5th time in our 20 years of democratic freedom. A total of 8,651 candidates from 45 political parties are standing for the general elections. Now, to talk to us through the final build-up to the big day, we are joined by Chief Electoral Officer Mosotho Moepa. Very welcome to the show.
It's good to be with you and good morning.
I'm very glad that you made it. We have finally reached the final week. Tell us about the build-up and the big question. Are we ready?
We are ready indeed. This has been work that we have prepared for, in the last 18 months or so. A lot of detail has been put into it, and we are very proud of the, product that we have put out there. We look forward to a very good election, as you may have seen yesterday when South Africans outside of the Republic were voting. Everything is ready for voting day.
Yes, on that note, with the South Africans, how did the voting go about the world?
It went well indeed. Indications are that it has gone much better than we have done in the past. We have seen and heard reports of South Africans indeed coming to visit their voting stations abroad. We have, the information I have is that we have recorded over 6,700 votes in London alone. And I think that is a relatively good turnout.
Now, what about the reports of people saying that there was a miscommunication with voting forms? Was that cleared up? What happened there?
I think there has been extensive communication that has gone into this process. But when you're communicating to, a large country and, the forms of media that are available to them and all other platforms, radio and so on and so forth, are issues that are very unique to that country, there will be this kind of glitches. I think no blame to be apportioned in this respect. We will be learning lessons from this process, and we should do better next time. The point I wish to make is that we have, as far as was possible, tried to even get in touch with the individual voter, and I think that is an extensive step to take for an institution such as ourselves.
Now, next up, we have the special votes. So when will those be taking place, and how do you qualify for a special vote?
Special vote applications closed on the 17th of April. And applications that we have received were just under 400,000, 300,000 of which are going to be home visits, and the other 100,000 persons that will be coming to our voting stations to either vote on the 5th or the 6th of May. That process is well underway as well.
Political parties will also, this coming weekend, round off their final campaigning, and we've seen tensions and we've seen some unrest in some communities. How has the IEC handled all of this up until now, and how will it ensure security next week as well?
We have put a multi-pronged process to deal with that situation. We have party liaison committees that convene in those communities to seek solutions to any challenges that may relate to, voting. We also have working relationships through conflict management panelists that consist of, people in good standing in those communities who help us to deal with this potential conflict. But importantly, we also work with the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster in this nation, and they've also been helping us greatly. Community leaders we are working with, we are talking to, and we hope through all of these platforms we should find a solution to the problems.
Now, how many incidents of political intolerance did you guys deal with, and are you expecting anything next week?
We don't actually have enormous amounts of challenges. Of course, campaigning, it's robust out there. We do get parties raising issues with us, and perhaps, in some instances, cases are reported as they should where a crime has been committed. But in incidents where, parties or communities have come to us to deal with problems, there have been very few of those, and we have dealt with them successfully. Now,
tell us, once you've voted, the process after that, just let our viewers know how things will be working from now on, from next week, Wednesday.
Well, all of our stations, 22,263 of them in the country, will open at 7 in the morning and close at 9 at night. Once voting is completed, and voting is completed when the last person in the queue at 9 is allowed to vote. Once that has happened, that voting station turns into a counting station, and we count until an outcome from that station is determined. We fill in a result slip, party agents sign alongside their party vote, and we take a copy of that result slip, seal it into a tamper-proof, transparent envelope, get 2 members of the security police to accompany our presiding or counting officer to a place where this will be captured on the systems. At that point, where the results are going to be captured, there are party agents, there are auditors whom we have retained for this purpose, and in this instance, PricewaterhouseCoopers are the auditors that we have. They will be auditing the results as they are captured, and we will have a live streaming of those results from that point to the results center, and the whole world will know about it.
I understand you had the rock launch yesterday.
We did.
Can you tell us a bit more? How was it? What is the energy like?
The rock, it's really synonymous with the transparency of our elections, where all of the role players in an election come together to share information on the developments taking place as elections unfold. This year's rock, it's particularly important and very different from the rocks that we have in the past. You know that also social media is playing at the moment. And we are aware that there will be lots of inputs coming from information we provide to media houses to information that will be coming back into the rock.
Then just lastly, to wrap up, your message to voters and the public who will go into the polls next week.
I want to say to South Africans that, elections 2014 are a very special kind of an election, 20 years of our democracy. I want to tell them that colleagues and us, everyone in this nation has worked very hard to ensure that we have a very good election. This is an election we would want to have every South African proud of. Everyone that is registered must indeed come and vote in this election.
Now, there you have it. And that was the IEC's Masutu Muyepa joining us to tell us a bit more about the last and the final build-up to the elections next week. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
You're welcome.
Then South Africa and Zimbabwe as neighbours share long-standing historical ties dating back to colonial rule. Through the liberation movements and after independence of both countries, most of South Africans eligible to vote in the special vote held in Zimbabwe were able to do so, according to the South African embassy officials. After the polls closed at 9 last night, embassy officials packed the ballot envelopes into a courier bag destined for the IEC in Pretoria. Officials described the early election as a success despite 5 people being turned away after their names were not found on the special voters register for Harare. Now, the SABC's correspondent in Zimbabwe, Shingai Nyoka, joins us from Harare on the line. Morning, Shingai.
Morning to you.
Shingai, just tell us, how did South African elections go in Zimbabwe?
Well, they went very well by any standard. When we arrived there at about 7 o'clock, there was already one person waiting there to cast their ballot. It's a very small community here in Harare of Zimbabwe of South Africans. Only about 40 people had registered or were eligible to vote, but they came through by about mid-morning to about mid-afternoon. At least about 3/4 of the people had already cast their vote. They were very happy to be participating in that election. Some of them hadn't voted for as long as 15 years because of the fact that this vote had been confined to South Africa previously. So there was really a lot of relief. There was a lot of excitement about being able to participate and add their voice to this 2014 election.
Now, Shingai, did you manage to talk to some of the voters who managed to cast their votes yesterday?
Yes, we did. The kinds of questions that we were asking them, we just wanted to find out why they thought this particular election was so important. And there's a general consensus. There was a general consensus among them that this is a watershed election for South Africa. It comes at a very interesting phase in terms of the political processes in South Africa. And many of them talked about the issues of corruption. They talked about the fact that from outside looking in, South Africa has a lot to be grateful for. It's a beautiful country, and that a lot of people complain from inside South Africa, but they don't really enjoy what they have, which is a beautiful country, lots of resources. And so there was a lot of yearning, and we got the sense that people are really hankering to be back in South Africa and really wanting to participate in that vote to ensure that their children have a good future.
Let us in more on the energy and the vibe going on in Zimbabwe now as South Africa heads to the polls next week.
Well, there's a lot of excitement, obviously, from the South African community living here. Just in terms of the relations between Zimbabwe and South Africa, it's an election that's been keenly watched. You spoke about the ties that the two countries have, and it's not just political ties, it's economic ties, and obviously, depending on the outcome of the elections, it would impact on the over 1 million people that are living in Zimbabwe or living in South Africa. A lot of their families are still here. They receive a lot of remittances from there. And so people are really watching to see which direction this particular election goes.
Then just lastly, the politics in Zimbabwe. Can you just give us an update on the power struggle within the MDC?
Well, there was a press conference that was held yesterday where the so-called renewal team led by the Secretary General reasserted its position that it is the legitimate faction in the party, that it will not recognize Morgan Tsvangirai. And so really it looks like this process is headed for the courts, that it's the courts that will decide who is legitimate and who is telling the truth in terms of whether the National Council meetings that were held in both parties actually constituted the legitimate members of the National Council. So at this stage, there's a lot of confusion amongst Zimbabweans as to what is happening within the MDC and the future of this political party, given that elections are just a few years away.
Shingai, thank you for joining us. And that was our correspondent from Zimbabwe, Shingai Nyoka, telling us what's going on in Zimbabwe with South Africa heading to the elections next week. Now let's take a look on what you are saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views to @SABC Newsroom on Twitter, or visit our website at www.sabcnews.co.za/news. And there we have it, the expats voting yesterday. The turnout in our voting stations abroad looks good. #VoteSA, well done, Klesimonyela and team. And there we have some of the photos coming in from people voting around the world yesterday. So proud to exercise my democratic right to vote at SA Embassy, The Hague. #VoteHomeSA. Some more photos coming in. Thousands lining up to vote Home SA outside the South African High Commission in London. Just look at all those pictures coming in. And then voted, organized, Malan, Vote Home SA, proudly SA. And then we've got voting at the Consulate General in Chicago. #Vote Home SA. Let's have a look at what's happening on our other social media platform on Facebook. Now, the elections are in less than a week, and the SABC's election site is now live and pumping out news and information about the May 7th elections. The site offers daily news on elections, debates between political parties, and analysis and handy information for voters in the run-up to, during, and after South Africa's 5th democratic elections. Go have a look at it on our Facebook page or at our website, sabc.co.za/news. Then after the break, we talk Workers' Day. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
I am Uhuru Muilwa, Deputy Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, also the champion of the Citizen Responsibility Campaign on behalf of the Gauteng Speakers Forum. Let us celebrate our 20 years of democracy and vote on May 7, 2014. We are proud of our democracy, confident of our future. My vote is my responsibility.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. International Workers' Day is a celebration of labour and the working classes that are promoted by the international labour movement, of which South Africa is part of. Workers' Day originated within the historical struggles of workers and their trade unions for solidarity between working people and in their struggles to achieve fair employment standards. May the 1st is a national public holiday in more than 80 countries around the world. Since 1994 and 20 years into democracy, the day is celebrated in South Africa every year. Now, we are joined in Port Elizabeth by Dennis George from the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, and from the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, is Patrick Craven joining us here in Johannesburg, as well as Joseph Mqakeni from the National Council of Trade Unions. Guys, thank you so much. And Dennis, thank you for joining us in Port Elizabeth.
Good morning. Good morning to all the listeners. Also, good morning, Patrick and Joseph.
Good morning.
Dennis, I would like to start here in Johannesburg. Patrick, with you. Can you just tell us, International Workers' Day, Give us some background pre-94, where this day came from.
Well, it goes back as far as the 1880s, following an incident in Chicago, which I won't go into too much detail, in which workers were killed. And the Trade Union International Federation of the time, shortly afterwards, decided that the day on which this happened, the 1st of May, should become Workers' Day. And as your intro said, it's now recognized as a holiday in 80 countries. It's celebrated, I suspect, in far more than that, even when it's not a holiday. In South Africa, it became particularly contentious because it wasn't a public holiday, and there was a big campaign led by COSATU in its very early years to have it made a public holiday. And in fact, they more or less made it a holiday anyway by having a huge stay away. And in the context of the time, that was very important because there were huge movements of workers anyway against apartheid, and somehow May Day symbolized the struggle of workers for not just a day's holiday, but for a complete change in the whole apartheid system.
Patrick, how will COSATU be celebrating Workers' Day? I understand you've got a couple of rallies across the country to go.
We have 27 rallies. The big national one is in Polokwane, where the COSATU president, Stumo Dlamini, will be speaking with the ANC president and the SACP general secretary. But there are many, many others. There isn't time to go into them all, in all the main centres and indeed some very small places. And we must stress it isn't just a sort of hard political day. There will be music, entertainment, food, and we would urge all your viewers to come along and enjoy a good Workers' Day holiday.
Dennis, I would like to get to you in Port Elizabeth. How should this day be reflected in South Africa according to FEDUSA?
I think on the reflection terms, I think we have made some good progress. If you remember the campaign that we started off with, you know, when trade unions said very clearly that workers should work for 8 hours at least. You know, they should have 8 hours for leisure, and they should 8 hours for rest within a 24-hour workday. You know, I think what is important for us going forward is that we want to look at what is the situation of workers in terms of their quality of employment. And then secondly, we want to look at the issue of the unemployment situation in this country, because there's many people in our country that are able to work, but they cannot find a space in the labor market. And then thirdly, we want to look at the systemic issues that is affecting working people in this country.
Dennis, how has the role of unions changed post-94, and what has been gained 20 years into democracy?
Look, I think we have made a lot of progress in terms of amplifying the voice of working people in NADLAC through bargaining councils, so that the trade unions can have a say on behalf of the members what should the salaries and conditions of employment of workers should be. But I think that working people are facing other huge challenges that could be addressed through NADLAC and in social partnership with government and business, because working people are still living out in Soweto or in Port Elizabeth, in New Brighton, which is sometimes far from the workplaces. And the prices of transport are increasing because we have no control over petrol prices. And those are the things that eat into the disposable income of working people. And those are the kinds of things that we want to look in, but to also look at the social wage for people's housing and so forth.
Then, Joseph, I want to get back to you here in Johannesburg. What are the biggest challenges within the labour movement at the moment?
Thank you very much. You see, the biggest challenges for the labour movement and the labour movement that need to focus is to ensure that Labour Relations Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and other laws which are there are implemented. We must ensure that monitoring and implementation were part of that at the workplaces, because that's where it matters most. Because even if there are laws that are good, but if the labour movement were not focusing on worker issues using the relevant laws that we fought for even before 1994, because you can have government. Government is for business and labor and everybody in the street. Our role, therefore, is to ensure that as workers, our shop stewards are trained so that they can handle the issues at the point of origin. Because when we look back as NACTO, from 1994 to date, we are the worst losers as workers. looking at conditions, because the structures of wages and other things are still the same, they're still intact. So you need, therefore, that as a labor movement, we are part and parcel of, at the point of origin, where these things needed to impact on workers to improve their living conditions. In particular, the issue of the labor brokers, the issue of e-tolls, those are impacting on the workers. We need consistent to fight those battles that we're fighting before 1994, because things are not changing to our liking as a labor movement.
Now, our hearts today should really go out to the platinum workers. Would you say that they have anything to celebrate today?
You're correct, because AMCU, those workers are members and an affiliate of NACTU. They have nothing to celebrate, because indeed they have taken their right, that is in the Constitution, to go on a protected strike. But because the laws of this country, you cannot force the employers. Although the employer, everybody knows that your CEOs in these 3 mining houses, they earn equals to those abroad. As such, they don't want to share with the workers this. As such, there's nothing to celebrate indeed. All what we need to do is to strengthen our fight so that our members get what they need, because it's affordable and it's fair.
Patrick, I want to know if you want to add something to that. I also want to know what, as COSATU, the challenges that we still face in the labour movement today.
Well, the biggest challenges are jobs and poverty, and we would have to add inequality. Unemployment is still far, far too high, which is not only a human tragedy for the people who can't get jobs, but also it's a total misuse of the country's resources. All those unemployed workers could be creating wealth and a better society. Also, from the trade union point of view, it obviously makes it easier for the employers to get away with exploitation and avoiding their legal responsibilities if they know that there are lots of unemployed workers who could take those jobs. Poverty, we believe, is key. That is why we've called for a national minimum wage. And inequality, I think, is particularly important in South Africa, which is now the most unequal society in the world. And it's one of the main reasons why there are so many disputes. A report in a Sunday paper indicated that the top executives of South African companies are now the second highest paid in the world. Only in the United States do they get more. So that means that their counterparts in Europe are actually taking less. But if you look at the workers' wages in Europe compared to South Africa, they're about 10 times as high. I mean, it's a huge difference. Workers are underpaid and must get a better reward for creating the wealth which those top salaries, after all, come from.
So just on that note, going forward, what are the achievements that still need to be made?
Well, full employment, ultimately, or as close as possible as we can get to it. A decent wage for everybody so that nobody is forced to live in poverty. But linked to that, we need major improvements in education, in healthcare, in public transport. And in particular, the issues which have already been mentioned, labour brokers and e-tolls. We need to not just create a better life for workers at work, but a better life when they go home, when their children need to be educated, when they fall ill and need healthcare. All these are issues which we think are important. We're sometimes accused of being too political, but you cannot avoid getting involved in these issues which are political, but which are outside the workplace, but nevertheless of great importance to the workers.
Dennis, just back to you in Port Elizabeth. Do you agree with what's being said here in Johannesburg? And then just what's your response to reports of divisions within the South African labour movement?
Okay, look, let me deal with the first issue of divisions. You know, you will always find that there is factions and people pulling in different directions. But what the leadership of NACTU, COSATU, and FEDUSA have taken at the beginning of this year was to say that we as leaders must work together to foster unity, social cohesion, cooperation, and collaboration. And that is something that we are very firm about, and that is something that we're going to take to the next level. But I think what is also important is that we need to put out the current fires that is burning at the moment. The situation on the Platinum Belt is something that is of great concern, as the situation is standing now, it is a lose-lose situation. Everybody is losing out. The workers, the companies, the communities, and government through taxes and income. And what we want to encourage both the employers and the leaders of AMCO is to come to a settlement as quickly as possible so that they can take the process forward, so that we can have the platinum belt contribute towards the economy. But I think what is also very important for us is to recognize that about 2/3 of the people in our country that's working in our labor market is earning less than 3,500 Rand per month. And that is why it's important for us to find a way to upskill our people so that their take-home check can be more, that we must also look to see how we can improve the collective bargaining process so that we can narrow the wage gap between the people that is earning more at the top and those that are earning less at the bottom. Because I think it's through skills development and worker education that we can ensure that we can improve the productivity of the companies and the income for the workers.
Now, are trade unions these days battling to define their role as workers' representatives?
Yes. Look, what has happened is that the Minister of Higher Education and Training have created a task team. And within this task team, he said we must define and come up with recommendations to say what is worker education. So worker education for us is a very broad concept. It first of all has to deal with leadership. It has to deal with leadership in the workplace. And it also has to deal with what is the role and the responsibility of a worker in a company and also in working in NGOs. Because the whole process must be that we must turn the mindset and change the mindset of South African workers so that we can realize that we are competing in a global competitive environment and that it's important for us to be at the best we can be to make a positive contribution to eradicate poverty, unemployment, and also inequality.
Dennis, thank you so much. That's Dennis George joining us from Port Elizabeth. And Joseph, I just want to ask you, does South Africa, according to NACTU, require a Workers' Party to represent their political and labour needs?
You see, South African society is very dynamic. If Workers' Party come into play, we will have no objection to that. But labour movement, whether it's a Workers' Party, whatever party you call, labour movement must be independent of those. If they support those political parties, whether it's labour because of their policies, but when they don't perform as expected, we must damn them. So we will have no problem. Like other parties, we don't have a problem. But if their policies are really relevant to the issues of the workers, indeed, it will be like any other party, which I won't mention, which are anti-workers.
Joseph, thank you so much. And that's Joseph Matlakeni joining us from the president of NACTU. And then, Patrick, just the final word goes to you. Over the next 20 years, where are we heading?
Well, I don't know, but I hope we will be heading for a more prosperous society, but above all, one where the prosperity is far, far more equally shared between all the people of South Africa, and particularly, of course, the workers, who, after all, are ultimately the people who create that prosperity.
Patrick, thank you so much. And that was Patrick Craven joining us from COSATU. Like you already know, today we are celebrating Workers' Day. Now let's take a look at what you are saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views to @SABC Newsroom on Twitter. Also our Facebook page, sabcnews.co.za/news. Happy Workers' Day, fighters, citizens, comrades, Democrats, etc. Happy Workers' Day, #Workers' Day, #Mayday. A very enjoyable Workers' Day to all. Thank you, COSATU, for all that you have done for workers' rights in our beautiful country. Good morning, Bookers. Happy Workers' Day to everyone who's working. Thank you very much for that. Then Happy Workers' Day, Indonesia. My thoughts are with those who are out of jobs. As you're well aware, Workers' Day is celebrated in 80 countries around the world. Then Happy Workers' Day, fighters, citizens, comrades, Democrats, etc. #Happy Workers' Day. Then after the break, we take a look at a basketball champ in Cape Town. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
coming up this week.
I think I am spiritually a daughter of South Africa. It started probably first when I saw Mary McCabe on television when I was a little girl. And it was like when you hear your mother tongue for the first time, you're speaking a different language. It was like, I was feeling her.
Join Refilwe and Eloise on Film South Africa every Friday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at your headlines for this day. NUMSA Secretary-General Eben says metal workers of South Africa will commemorate May Day by reflecting on the challenges they have been facing in the 20 years of democracy. Today, workers across the world will be commemorating May Day. This year's May Day commemorations coincides with 20 years of a free and democratic country. With next week's general elections drawing closer, political parties are seeking to maximize the remaining time they have left to leave a lasting impression with voters. Leaders of different political parties are expected to hold Workers' Day rallies around the country. Meanwhile, thousands of South Africans living abroad have been voting, with many spending hours queuing to reach ballot boxes. This is the first election which has allowed South Africans to register outside the country, meaning a higher turnout than previous years. And then Kaizer Chiefs' hopes of retaining the Premier League title appear to be in tatters after they were held to a 1-1 draw by relegation-threatened Free State Stars at the Peter Mokaba Stadium on Wednesday night. Amakosi now find themselves trailing log leaders Mamelodi Sundowns by 4 points with 2 fixtures remaining. Then we now go to Cape Town. Gugulethu-born basketball champ, motivational speaker, model and philanthropist Vincent Tunja is set for international stardom when he leaves South African shores this month to partake in the Invictus Award, a reality sport and adventure challenge which will be filmed in Morocco. And Tunja is the only African participant of 7 international sports stars to partake in the 2nd season of the 2014 Invictus Award. He joins us in Cape Town. Hello, Vincent. How are you?
Hello, Catrine, and how are you?
I'm very great, thank you. Vincent, can you just start off with telling us exactly how this challenge and reality show will work?
First of all, I would like to wish my fellow South Africans a happy Workers' Day. But the Invictus Award is an international reality sports show, like you have said. It comprises of 7 athletes that are chosen all over the world by the scouts who come from Paris. And fortunately, they came here to South Africa, and we went to casting, and then I was selected as one of the guys that would represent South Africa. And we'll be going there just to compete on daily sporting activities. And then the overall winners will probably just have to finally get the chance to realize their sporting dream.
You are the only South African to partake in this challenge. Let us in on where the other contestants are from and how did you all qualify?
There's a scout from Paris who traveled to countries like your Italy, your Brazil, your Russia, and then they went to these countries just to look for one specific athlete in these different countries. And then I'm not sure exactly where they're from, the rest, but I've already met them just via the good spirit that we have sharing sportsmanship. But it's through the scout who came here and decided that maybe because I've played the national team, which was one of the criteria that you needed, and obviously you must be involved in a community project. So those are things that I live by on a daily basis. So I guess I was fortunate enough to be one African that's selected.
Now, you are a basketball champion in South Africa. Give us a brief background of your career and what age did you start playing basketball?
Like any other kid, I grew up playing soccer. But at the age of 14, 15, I saw these guys playing this funny sport next to my house. They're throwing it up and down, and then we will go there just to say, guys, why can't you be soccer players, you know? So they said they love basketball, but eventually because soccer is dominant in South Africa, we will just go in the courts and just chase them away, and then we will start shooting the basketball. And then eventually we started missing the soccer practices and came to more basketball now. And then in 3 months' time, while I was playing basketball, I was actually taken to a trials at UCT where they needed 15 players. But in actual fact, they needed 12, but I was cut in the last 15. So I was like, if I work harder, the following year I'll definitely make the province and the national team. So that became my motivation, and then I told myself, before school started, I'll go jog and then play for at least an hour, come back from school and still play basketball. So that gave me a chance, and then for the next year, same trials, I did make the national team, and also it was my first time also traveling to World Youth Games in Russia. That's when I actually decided that this game is definitely for me. And then as much as I love soccer, it's still in my heart, but I had to put it aside and continue my basketball dream. And it came with so many achievements as well, because I traveled to Michael Jordan camp where I got to play against 500 participants from around the world. And eventually Michael Jordan himself just gave me the most valuable player award at the games, you know. So that's when, once again, I realized that this game is bestowed upon me, and obviously using my achievements to ensure that I give them back to my community where I come from.
Vincent, we had a look at some beautiful pictures of you a bit earlier. Tell us, what do you get up into your spare time?
On my spare time, I spend it with mostly family, because I get to travel a lot. I get to be training a lot. So I try to spend it with my family, and obviously just visit orphanages and visit old people in my hood, so that I believe that I have a responsibility now to be a role model where I can use the influence that I have to just make a difference. So those are some of the things that I do in my spare time.
Vincent, just a final question. The prize money of this reality show is 700,000 Rand, in which will be given to a fund any sports project of your choice. Just tell us more about the project that lies close to your heart. When I was 12 years old, a young kid growing up in Guguletu, I lost a parent in my father. And then instead of using that as a sad moment, I said that I need to dream big. I need to use this as some form of motivation for me to become a better person. So I had a dream of saying that I'm going to try to make a difference using the sport. So now this has given me an opportunity to do that, because 700,000, 50,000 euros, it's a lot of money. So I'm involved already in Amy Bill Foundation, and I'm also a chairperson of an outspoken youth initiative. So those are projects that's very close to my heart, and I'm definitely going to be using that money to ensure that we still make a difference in the kids' lives around the Cape Flats area. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck. That was Vincent Tunja, a basketball champion from Cape Town, who will later this month be heading to Morocco to partake in a reality challenges series to win money for a charity of his choice. Now, with under a week left until South Africa's 5th democratic poll, let's now take a look at how SABC Digital News will be bringing you up-to-date information. Joining me is SABC Digital News producer Sipho Kekana. Welcome to the show. Let me first start there. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Thanks.
Happy Workers' Day to you.
Happy Workers' Day to you too.
Let's start off. We've had a look at the election website earlier on the Facebook page. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, we launched it on Tuesday, and the response from the public has been very great. People are loving it. It's a very dynamic website, which is very insightful, very full of information. When you go into the elections website, you first land onto the homepage, which carries out comprehensive coverage of all the elections coming up next week on May 7. And yeah, I would say that it is your one-stop website when it comes to elections coverage. The response that we have received so far is very massive. And we also have voter information, which carries out information about, it tells users or voters about what to expect with regard to the elections, and it carries out all the regulations about the IEC and voting. You'd find information like you wouldn't need to go onto the IEC, for instance, to get more information about what needs to be done with regards to voting abroad. I mean, it would avoid situations like what happened in the US yesterday, where some of the experts were told that they cannot vote because they had not filled in the VEC10 forms. We have all that kind of information on our site. It's very insightful.
Is this the site that we're looking at now
yes,
here in the background?
That is the site.
Then I see you also have a lot of party information, so people can go there.
Yes, we have extensive party profiles on the site about the history of the parties.
See, that's up here in the background right now.
How the parties have evolved, just like I say, extensive profiles of parties and party candidates who's on which party's list and on on which rank, and all that kind of information. It is all there.
Yeah, so here you've got your parties and you've got your party candidates, and people can go there and find out all the information that they need to know.
Of course, everything is there, yeah.
Then after the elections, will the site be changing? How will it look?
It will get even more interesting even then. I get better. We have the election result system, which we have predictions, which will be put up there in terms of our race for votes, who's leading in which province. And nationally as well, we are working in conjunction with the CSIR, who will also be helping out in as far as predictions are concerned. And even more interesting, there's the What If tool, whereby users will be able to click on that and play around and put parties together, two or more parties together, and match those parties against each other to see what would happen if they were to form a coalition in an instance where in a province there is no party that would have won an absolute majority. So it's going to get interesting. Like I say, it's your one-stop elections website.
I saw a lot of multimedia content. Yeah. How will people be able to interact with you guys?
We have Facebook. We have some interesting widgets. Facebook, people can go onto our elections website and post their comments there, or on our Twitter page and post their comments there, and they will appear on our front page, on the home page. And we're also running the Born Free campaign.
I see the Born Free campaign here in the background now. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, we actually, this is where we are engaging with the Born Frees, those who were born after 1994. And they are sending us their videos telling us about how they see elections. They tell us about their reasons why they are going to vote. And the response that we have received from the youth is very fantastic. It's actually very interesting to see how...
We will be looking a lot at the Born Frees in this election to see the amounts of them going to the polls. Just tell us, how will people be able to interact with the Born Free campaign?
People can actually go onto, there's an email address there. They can send us their videos, and then we will put this up on our website. And like I say, it's interesting to see how the youth is actually taking the elections so seriously. A lot of people have been saying that the youth is a little apathetic towards the elections, and if you go onto our Born Free feature, you'll actually realize, no, a lot of the youth are actually looking forward to the elections.
And just on a final note, yesterday we saw the South Africans abroad going to the polls. How has digital news covered that?
Sure. Obviously, we have correspondents all over, and they've been keeping us up to date with regard to the turn-up in all the voting stations abroad. And we have videos online. We have picture galleries. People can go onto the site and see all those videos. And we have some very good interviews, especially from the US. Some of those people who were turned away, experiencing their disappointment about the fact that they were not informed about all the procedures that they needed to go through to be able to vote.
It's all very exciting, and we'll certainly be
Indeed.
keeping an eye out on the digital platform next week. Now, that was Catrine joining us from the digital team here, and they will be all up to date with the elections happening next week. Now, we've come to the end of the show. Newsroom was broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. You can watch the show on demand on our YouTube channel throughout the day if you missed it. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.